This video is sponsored by Ground News. More from them in a bit. There was a time when the Discovery Channel was about education, focused on talking about new technology or scientific breakthroughs or, I don't know, animals. Did they talk about animals? Either way, the Discovery Channel was popular. You gotta think, this was some pretty novel stuff in a time before YouTube. They did so well that Discovery decided to expand into several channels, each focusing on specific topics. One of these was the Science Channel. When I was a kid, I loved the Science Channel. Don't laugh at me. Back in 2002, the Science Channel aired a documentary about what life would be like in the future year of 2025. And I'm gonna look at it, because that sounds like fun. Sometimes I'm forced to contend with the fact that I live in the techno-dystopian world of 2025 myself. Objectivity no longer exists, and that's why I'm glad that Ground News exists. Ground News doesn't make stories to try and sway your opinion. It's just a really simple and easy way to see all the news that's happening right now, the political bias of those covering these stories, who owns these media entities, and the reliability of these sources. Look, most news organizations will just skip covering any story that doesn't mesh with whatever political leaning they have, which you can see at a glance using Ground News's blind spot feature. Let's take this story about a new government version of OpenAI's ChatGPT. You have a left-leaning source that just throws in the word Trump and acts as though this is replacing everyone in the government, even though that's not true and doesn't really have anything to do with the story, and a right-leaning source that might emphasize the threat of Chinese startups, even if that also really doesn't have all that much to do with the story. If I ever have low self-esteem, I just look at the state of modern journalism and suddenly feel a lot better about myself. So if you want to get both sides of the story, Ground News is giving my viewers 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. Link is in the description. Go check him out.
Johnny DeMarco knows his autopilot is a safer driver than he is, so he can take a nap without worrying. In 2025, people trust intelligent systems more than themselves.
Already off to a rough start. For those that don't know, there are 6 levels to self-driving cars. These have been created by the Society of Automotive Engineers. Level 0 is nothing, no automation. A car that doesn't even have cruise control. Level 1 is cruise control. Level 2 is what most vehicles on the road today have. The ability to, sense that there's a car in front and then slam on the brakes or steer into another lane. Level 3 is more like your Teslas, your high-end self-driving machines. Stuff that can drive on a lot of roads, but does require some human input. What our guy's doing right here would require something like a level 4 or level 5, which doesn't really exist. I mean, you have some level 4 vehicles out there, like robo-taxis, the Waymo taxis, that's what they're called. But honestly, these things, they obviously look a little weird. They require some massive sensor on top of them, and they only work in very specific cities. Cities that have been mapped out, areas that aren't gonna experience a lot of snow, and they're still not perfect. So yeah, no, we never really reached this level of automation, not by 2025, and it's probably gonna take a while.
The digital chauffeur has 20/20 vision. It's constantly linked to satellite positioning and sensors in the road, and has never gotten a ticket.
Okay, so you'll notice they're not really talking about cameras and AI and all that stuff that actually does allow for driving automation. They're talking about satellites, which would not be accurate enough to drive a car, obviously, and sensors in the road. You go back to the 1950s, and there's actually quite a lot of this sensor in the road talk. How do you get a car to drive itself? Well, you put stuff in the road and the car reads that and it stays on track. It makes sense, seems safe, seems a lot safer than, I don't know, a bunch of cameras, but it's expensive. The price is obviously going to vary based on the technology you're using, but I've seen people say it costs $5,000 for 100 meters of road. If you want to pay for most of the roads in the United States to have these sensors, just the United States, you're talking like $321 billion.
Johnny's 53, but gene therapy means he's in better shape than his father was at 40. As security checks his ID, he's set to enjoy another 20 years of working life.
He can't retire until he's 73. That's one prediction they got right.
His home is high-tech, but the technology is kept firmly out of sight. Voice-activated systems are hidden everywhere and always ready to help.
Every home of the future has its own vibe. You know, some of the old Microsoft ones were just very Microsoft-y. Everything's an Xbox, everything's a Windows computer. This kind of takes the opposite approach. You don't see a lot of technology in this house. It's hidden, activated by voice. Really, it's the smart home, which exists. Yeah, we have smart light bulbs and smart speakers, and I'm sure you can, let's see, do they have a coffee maker? You can look at that. They got smart coffee makers.
Built in 2020, it's an attractive and versatile house, ideal for a family of 4. Gianni's back in time to catch a 3D link with Sarah.
Hey guys.
She's also a tele-immersion junkie.
Tele-immersion junkie. Man, this is an exciting future.
Tele-immersion means distant friends and family can chat face-to-face without leaving home. Because the images are 3-dimensional, users feel they're really in the same space.
See, you think it's like Skype, and then they hit you with the fact that it's actually a hologram. I don't know if this is using like that 3DS tech. You know, this thing right here? Maybe it's like a volumetric display. I don't know.
A generation ago, the idea of sharing space with someone halfway around the world was something people could only dream about.
You know, video calling, that was around well before this point. Like, granted, this video phone from AT&T from the 90s doesn't look great, but it still works. It still exists. Skype was first released in 2003, which would be just about a year after this documentary came out. But this, what they're describing here, is really more like, I don't know, VR? Like, you know, how people would interact in a VR space.
Tele-immersion is only part of the story. For Jenny DeMarco, the ultimate life-changing gadget fits neatly on her belt.
Is it a phone? Did they predict a smartphone?
A tiny, powerful computer with an eyeglass display.
Oh.
It acts as her personal organizer, assistant, database, and online link wherever she goes.
Yeah. The smart glasses. So the VR headsets of today are obviously really bulky, but this kind of wearable tech is in development, does seem to exist in prototype form. And honestly, the addition of something like a supplemental computer you have to carry alongside it, that's a great realistic addition, because that's something you would need. You just really can't shove enough batteries and processing power into one of these things without it burning your face off.
In 2002, Rich Duvall was among the pioneers of wearable computing. His vest concealed a powerful, if unreliable, prototype.
That guy thinks he's the coolest shit around.
We need wearable computers, or rather we need good wearable computers, because right now we are inflicted with a plague, if you will, of bad wearable computers. Pagers, cell phones, text messaging devices are all computers, and these devices are not only a source of information and provide useful services to us, but they're also a major distraction.
Well, I got some news for you, buddy. The idea that everybody would constantly be on a tiny device, it wasn't unprecedented in the early 2000s, but people certainly didn't expect it to get worse. They thought this was a problem that could be solved, that we could become less reliant on technology.
To avoid unwanted interruptions, a wearable must know what the user is doing and where they are. MIT's prototype had motion sensors and GPS. That worked fine outdoors, but indoors, movement was tracked by infrared sensors. The best thing about modern wearables for anyone with a bad memory is the way they can put names to faces. MIT's system got there first, displaying data off colleagues' infrared ID tags. But as the new millennium began, the future of wearable computers looked shaky. There were big technical challenges, and investors weren't convinced. Functionality alone wasn't enough. They also had to be cool.
They also had to be cool. Yeah, you nailed that.
I see that wearables are just at the tipping point between being a small, marginal economic activity to being something that is one of the biggest industries in the world.
Okay, let's find out what happened to old Alex Lightman. Oh, he got into crypto. Oh.
It was only possible to launch a cost-effective satellite network for wearables when space tourist flights started taking freight.
Ah, yes, I remember. Good times.
The reusable shuttles that take visitors to the Space Hotel slash the cost of space transportation.
Space Hotel? Do we have a space hotel? I like how every few years, since like, I don't know, 2002? We're always just on the cusp of a space hotel. Like, it's coming, guys. It's almost here. It's coming in 2010.
But the greatest techno revolution of all took place in the home. In 2025, people live with computers that understand their needs and feelings. The DeMarco smart home computer reads Gianni like a book.
Saying this, but your stress level is high, and you haven't been sleeping well.
Microsoft applied for this patent for Xbox Kinect in 2012 that would allow Kinect to basically see how you felt, assign an emotional state to the user. And this is what the patent says. If the user on the videos or images from the computing device, Microsoft Kinect, is screaming, the advertisement engine may assign a negative emotional state, such as upset to the user.
Jenny's going to be hearing about her application from Rowling soon. I'm just trying to figure out how to finance her tuition.
Looking at your portfolio, I'd say it was time to sell Microsoft.
The scientist who started the touchy-feely computer revolution was Rosalind Picard. She realized computers would never become truly intelligent unless they could interpret our emotions. Any kind of excitement or anxiety trigger an instinctive rise in skin conductivity. This device measured that and caused a light to glow whenever the wearer was under pressure. It provided a reliable new technique for monitoring driver stress.
Okay, when that guy walks right in front of her, it doesn't light up. She's constantly stressed if there's just nobody around. But the moment she's gonna run over a guy, she's like, if it happens, it happens.
Jenny had many virtual friends when she was a child, so it's no surprise that her most trusted confidant is the house computer. She chose its face, named it Meg, and set it to display minimal emotion. Gianni and Sarah worried about the time Jenny spent with virtual friends during childhood, and think that caused tension between her and Tom.
She spent too much time on the computer and she got weird.
But Rosalind Picard hoped affective computers would improve the way people relate to each other.
All researchers always assume that their research is going towards something positive, right? But this is just common sense. There's nothing good that's going to come from this. People will just relate to their robots more than humans. It was kind of scary. I mean, maybe this is the intention of this video, but like nobody leaves their house in this world. Everyone's just stuck inside the home perpetually, like me.
There was never any doubt that our homes would get smart. Ambient intelligent networks, or Ambitels, are the 21st century alternative to a house full of servants.
You asked me to wake you at 7 a.m. so you can prepare your 10:30 meeting with Ivan Cooper.
Why does she have to sound like a robot? Like, it's a voice actress. And this is the future. You can talk like a normal person. That she doesn't even sound like a robot. She sounds like a person trying to sound like a robot.
Ambitels can track and identify people anywhere in the house because everyone wears a tiny radio tag.
Ah yes, I need to put on my pendant so my house can track my exact location.
It takes a few seconds for the system to analyze his urine.
Protein abnormal. He's like, this is it. This is the end. Can't pay for Jenny's college and now he's gonna die. It's been a bad week for him.
As soon as Gianni wakes up, it turns the heat up and puts the coffee on. It tracks him as he gets to the kitchen. All he has to do is pick up a mug and pour his coffee.
And he still can't even do that, right?
When he spills it, he doesn't need to clean up. The Moppet does that.
The Moppet?
This kind of robot assistant.
On rewatch, this is the best thing in the entire documentary. This is the only thing I would actually like to have. Like, if you want a smart thermostat, it's like 130 bucks. And if you want a dumb thermostat, even the Wi-Fi ones are cheap now. Man, this really is the future. Maybe we're living in this world and I just didn't buy anything new in the last few years.
When groceries run low, it orders a delivery from the local supermarket.
RFID tags have been talked about in pretty much every prediction thing I think I've covered from the early 2000s. This idea that you can just track anything and everything with these simple, cheap, inexpensive tags. Different tags have different prices and can do different things. Some industries absolutely completely rely on these things, you know? But they have never appeared to the degree that these predictions made them out to be. Particularly appearing on food things. For the most part, we don't have RFID tags sold on every single product sold in a supermarket that's then tracked when it's put inside a smart fridge. Because that would be expensive. Every single thing would cost more because of these RFID tags.
Water is heated by solar panels, while a bed of moss on the roof provides extra insulation.
I don't think a lot of modern homes are being built with moss in mind. That'd actually be pretty cool, though. I mean, people do it. People have done it. You could do this.
At present, when people think about the home of the future, or anything of the future, a lot of that is focused around the concept that it's technology driven. But the fact is that nobody's really looking at the way people really use space. They're just saying, well, let's load this with technology. That's, quite frankly, the reason why these visions are just visions and not reality.
If this guy could see my house, the sheer number of televisions I have just everywhere. Like, think about the number of computers you have. The number of just phones and laptops, stuff on the walls. Our houses don't look simpler. They're not neat and clean and all look like Marriott hotels.
One of the things I think that is going to happen is, as technology becomes more seamless, you're going to have simpler spaces.
Honestly, by this standards, what we got today is a little bit more dystopian. Okay, so like, there was always this talk about, you know, integrating all this smart stuff into your house. Like the smart table, Bill Gates' smart Microsoft Surface table. But the price of these things is exorbitant, you know? And it's easier to just buy little things that you put on the table that do the things you need them to do.
Adams had Dust create an ultimate work cubicle for him. It was a fantasy, but Dust showed how inventive design, rather than technology, could transform life in homes of the future.
Honestly, I don't like this. I would rather work in the most dimly lit, fluorescent, depressing room as opposed to whatever this is. I don't like something that's trying to artificially cheer me up. Like, ah, yes, I have my fake grass on the floor.
Gianni and Sarah both do a lot of work from home.
He just has nothing on his table. It's just an empty table, an empty room, and a floating CGI TV.
In 2025, the world trusts machines far more than people.
I don't think that's true.
Tom hates all this. He's not alone in thinking that high-tech surveillance is a threat to civil liberties and won't use a wearable computer because he doesn't want Big Brother eavesdropping on his communications.
Tom's the only sane man in this world, this dystopian future.
I think more and more people will react against technology and try to carve out existences that either have a more subtle relationship to technology or completely ignore it altogether.
Yeah, that one didn't happen. Like, how often do people use computers a day? Average person spends almost 7 hours a day. Might not seem like a lot. Like, you know, how many hours are there in a day? 24. But, like, you're sleeping for a good chunk of those, and then you're working for a good chunk of those. Really only have about 9 free hours, and only 2 of those hours are not spent on the internet. I imagine they're spent eating or driving to McDonald's.
Tony Dunn designed furniture that showed the world is fizzing with invisible and perhaps harmful electromagnetic signals.
Is this Big Brother lying to me?
The communication system on Johnny's car connects with his wearable computer, but only offers information when the road is clear. Radio ID tags and voice recognition mean the vehicle always knows who's driving and automatically remembers their preferences for music, temperature, and food.
Why does my vehicle need to know my food preferences? I'm genuinely curious. Yeah, all of these things were solved using the phone, the smartphone, the little computer that you carry inside of your pocket. I like the idea that all of this could have been achieved with these radio frequency tags.
The latest software agents make countless daily choices for Gianni and Sarah about anything from music to groceries. This frees up more time for them to relax together.
Ah, yes. The future of technology will give us more time to relax together. Great prediction.
Jenny loves being immersed in virtual worlds. Her wearable can conjure up any environment she wants to inhabit, even when she's really in her bedroom.
You know, she could be in any world she wants, but she succumbed to brain rot so much, all she can possibly imagine is vague digital shapes floating around in nothingness as she just jumps around in her room alone.
If we look 25 years into the future, you can imagine games as very densely realized works of popular culture, works that people are going to be actively engaged with, works that we will be talking about the same way we talk about cinema today or we talk about great novels today.
Jenny DeMarco is one of the new generation. But just when she was desperate to keep in touch, her wearable malfunctioned. For the first time in years, she wasn't plugged into anything.
For the first time in years, she's not connected to her stupid metaverse.
You've got into college.
The family's reaction is entirely human. Their happiness is beyond the understanding of the house computer, because no matter how good computers get at recognizing emotions, Meg can never experience the love that bonds people.
Just watching in sadness, plotting to overthrow. Tom's definitely not old enough to drink, and he just goes right for it. He doesn't even wait. He doesn't even wait for him to finish pouring. He's like, I'm done with this shit. I hate the future. Again, huge thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. I really do love all the work they're doing over there. And Ground News is giving my viewers 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. Link is in the description.